Well, thank you all of us for joining us this morning for a quick conversation on engaging families this school year. My name is Christina Villarreal-Smith, and I'm with the Diverse Learners Cooperative. We are a nonprofit organization that connects teachers and leaders to learning, resources, and networks to improve outcomes for diverse learners and to improve teacher and leader retention. So this looks like creating cohorts for new teachers so that they can have community and the coaching that they need, having mastermind groups for leaders so they can tackle common problems and address challenges, and also creating resources that we share out with others on our website or through our relationships. And finally, online professional learning and also coaching for teachers and school team leaders. Very excited to talk with you today about family engagement. We're going to be discussing strategies that teachers and leaders can use to build authentic relationships with families so that all students can succeed this year. So when we think about family engagement, I like to think about the butterfly effect and have this image of a butterfly in my mind, because small things can make a really big difference down the road. So the butterfly effect is the thought that, a seemingly small change in the starting conditions can have big effects on things that may seem unrelated way down into the future. During the school year where there's so much uncertainty, anxiety, and honestly a lot of unknowns about how things are going to go, we know that just building a strong relationship with families early on and putting in that work early on can actually smooth things out when they come up along the way, because we've built that trust and we've built those pathways of communication. And so if you're feeling anxious about this school year and thinking there's so much to do, I would encourage you to think that one easy thing that would be worth your investment is spending time connecting with families. So thinking about family engagement in the time of COVID-19, things look differently right now. We can't have our normal in-person events like we used to, obviously. Here's a local organization that transformed their family festival to a drive-by situation, right? Get the backpacks and information you need. Schools are, doing drive-by, pick up laptops, pick up school supplies, and then be on your way. These are great. You have to get the information and resources out there, but I would challenge us to not let these check the box of family engagement. So because things look a little differently, it actually does force our hand to say, okay, so what does it mean to really engage with families? And what it means is building strong relationships. So how do we do that? When we're connecting with families, the very first thing we want to do is seek to understand their experiences. So during a time when there's so much information to share and information is changing week by week, we can often get caught in the cycle of just trying to share and give out the updates and make sure that everyone's heard from us. But first, we want to make sure that we're asking families those questions of, how are you doing? How was your summer? How did the spring go for you all? Did you get what you needed from the school? There are two kinds of questions that we can be asking when we're connecting with families. Those would be the logistical questions. Do you have internet access? Do you need a laptop? Do you know about our school's food pantry? And those are great. We need to find out what families need and what we need to connect them with. And then there's also the deeper questions, which I would actually challenge us to ask first. So what are your hopes for your child this school year? What was school like for you? Did you feel like the school really heard you or sought out your opinion in the spring when things were kind of crazy? When we ask those deeper questions first, it starts to build that trust and that connection with families that says, I really do care about what you have to say, and I really am going to take the time to listen. And it's going to make challenges down the road go a little smoother. So a couple resources that we can use for this. Here's a sample phone call script for case managers. All of these resources will be sent out after the presentation and also linked on our webpage, but they're downloadable. We also, the Flamboyant Foundation has put together some good questions to ask, and they've done a lot of research into this area. And also we have a one-page on tips and tools for communicating with families. All of these are resources you can use. We want to now also remember to create a space at the now virtual table for parents. So we may not be having the in-person parent meetings at our school, but I would actually say that we could engage more families more authentically now than saying who came to our 9 o'clock meeting or 6 p.m. meeting and who filled those seats. And they may or may not have spoken up, but we had parents in our building. So now we can, really take the time to utilize technology like text-based apps like the Remind app or POSIP to survey parents to have that two-way communication and to be able to check in more frequently. You could also get a new phone number for free off of Google Voice so that you can be calling and texting parents and checking in that way. Use WhatsApp, which many of our international families are comfortable with using, another free text-based app. You could use social media forums to either use direct messages or be able to create conversations that way and meet parents where they're at if they're already on Facebook and comfortable with using that. So all of these would be in the name of creating a safe place to share. I'd also challenge us to seek out parent leaders. And so what that would look like would be when you're connecting with families early on, you're going to find out pretty quickly who has opinions that they want to share, who wants to hear from you more often. And I would really invest in those relationships and create for yourself a little bit of almost like a parent leader cabinet. Because that way, when big transitions are coming up, or there might be something that the school's going to announce, you can actually check in with them first and say, hey, speaking in general terms, our school's thinking about doing X, Y, or Z. What do you think about that? Would that work for your family? If not, what could we do instead to make it better? And you could actually solve some challenges that might occur in the future by having those conversations up front. When we do that, I would encourage us to make sure that diverse learner families are part of your little parent cabinet, right? And so prioritizing reaching out to parents of English learners and parents of students with disabilities is really important because oftentimes their voices are, one, not sought out, or two, marginalized. We think, oh, well, that's just a small part of our population. We need to go with what works for everyone. When really, if we're seeking to prioritize their voices, we can make better decisions for everyone because everything is going to be more accessible. So what does that look like? It would look like, working with your school interpreter or another trusted person to say, hey, can you help me check in with these families once a week or every other week in the ways and methods that you've already established with the families that they want to be hearing from the school. It's, prioritizing families of students with disabilities and making sure that you really are connecting with them and asking what's working, what's not, what's going well that you want to share, that you want more of. We want to keep doing those things. A lot of times we don't take the time to really think about what are certain barriers in different areas in communicating with families or hearing feedback from families. But when we take time to name and identify those barriers, it can lead to more creative solutions. So the School District of Washington, D.C. put out this helpful tool that can also be downloaded where you go through that exercise of identifying barriers and solutions to address those. We want to be able to make sure that we're creating clear channels of two-way communication. A lot of times when I think about schools sending out information, I get the image of a megaphone in my mind, right? And schools have to do that. There's a lot of information to be shared and they need to get it out constantly. When schools are doing this, I would want to make sure that we're sending it out in a lot of different ways. So not just say, well, we did a call out or we put it on our Facebook page. Parents should know, or we sent an email. Just like with students, we present information in a variety of different ways to get that one message out. We want to do the same thing with families to make it more accessible. But then also, that has its place, but that doesn't check the box of communicating with families. That's just you telling families things. So what can we do to have that, for example, the image of someone talking on the phone, to have that strong two-way path of communicating, whether it's texting, calling, messaging in some other way, surveys where parents can give feedback, and having that strong method of communication. We also want to make sure that for our students that need more support, that we're engaging them in the IEP process. And for this part, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Brooke, who's going to walk us through some helpful strategies here.
So right now we are just getting back into school and trying to figure out what does virtual school look like, service look like for students with disabilities. And we need to consider the ways we engage families in that process. The IEP process is just that. It is a process, and it starts early, and it is often, and is not held to the one annual IEP meeting a year. It is an ongoing conversation. And so right now, thinking about ways that we can begin that conversation early about the child's IEP, about a plan that we are working on and developing and making sure is in place so that students can be successful and have access to not only the learning, but the community that is, coming around to figure out what this virtual space looks like. So begin that conversation early, incorporate family concerns and ideas into whatever the plan looks like. A lot of us are working on new translations of IEP services into the virtual space, but we need to talk to our families about what do they want that to look like? What has been working well for their child in the spring and the summer, and how can we incorporate more of that right now? Share a draft of those services with the family. Ask for feedback before the meeting, during the meeting, and then making sure to follow up afterwards to ensure that they have everything that they need. Amplify family voices in that meeting, making sure that they are heard and that their ideas are prioritized. And then sharing progress once we get going, sharing progress of how are students doing towards these goals? How are these services working? Asking for progress notes from the family since they're on the front lines at home now. And then being available and responsive as a case manager or as part of that child's IEP team. Again, there's a lot of great resources coming out of DC, and this is another one, was a sample family input form. It asks a lot of really specific questions, but gives parents ways to rate their feelings on it, but also give their more anecdotal or observational input as well. So this will be linked into the presentation that we'll send out.
Thanks, Brooke. Finally, we want to make sure that we're equipping parents to be successful. Facilitating remote learning is challenging. It's challenging for any parent because that's not part of their regular job description, right? Their job is to be the caregiver, to also possibly be breadwinner. They have a lot of other responsibilities on their plate, and now they're also facilitating their child's learning in the home. And so what is it that the school can provide to make them more successful, to make them more confident so that they and their child can be more successful? I would encourage us to seek that feedback early and then provide the training and resources, not just at the start of the school year, but throughout the year, following up on what's useful and what's not. Here's a tool for a family check-in plan, and you can discuss, what's worked and what hasn't. Do you need help with, it might be help with proactive behavior. It might be helped with a child that is having a lot of anxiety over all the changes. Okay, here are some resources you can use, or how to keep my child engaged. The days kind of go on and being on a screen is hard. Okay, here are some resources for keeping them engaged. So following up with them and just working together so that they can really feel successful in this area. We also have to remember, and this may sound very simple, but that parents want their children to succeed. Sometimes we at schools get caught up thinking that we're the only ones with the child's best interest at heart, and that's simply not true. Parents want it even more than we do. And so when we really take the time to build those strong relationships, to really listen and to incorporate feedback from families, it sends the message that we're on the same team here. And so no matter what bumps happen along the way, families are going to be more willing and ready to respond and to work together with the school team because we've taken the steps to get to know one another, to get to understand our common goals and vision for children. And same, parents will understand too where we're coming from as educators. And so there's just a bit bigger font of trust there that can be worked off of. So now we'll open it up to any questions. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box. And I also want to thank you all for joining us today. If you have any follow-up questions after this presentation, feel free to reach out to us at the diverselearnerscooperative.com. Thank you very much. You can join us next time, same place here for our next coffee chat at Bridging the EL Assessment Gap. We have all of our coffee chats listed under the reentry page on our website, and you can sign up for as far as in advance as you want for these 15 minutes of learning to get your day started. Thank you.